Gray areas. This is part 4. How you have been learning those fast as you began this conversation? Are you sure? Your mind is shaking. Amen. So we're going to continue from where I will pause. I couldn't take all the questions last week Sunday because of time. Don't forget that what we are looking at under gray areas is how God's word regulates what we do in our secular affairs. That's what we're looking at. We looked at relationships and marriage-related matters. Last week Sunday, we began looking at matters related to workplace and businesses. How does God's word dictates how we do things as businessmen, career people in our workplaces? That was where we stopped. So I'm going to, because I gave numbers last week, I didn't take your questions. Let me repeat the numbers. I gave you numbers last week, but I did not take. Did I take all the questions last week?
No, sir. 5.
So what the 5 now? I'm seeing you one. I gave numbers 2. So Joe is 1, Elizabeth is 2, and then Baltimore is 2. So I will have just 3 people who are alive today. Okay, good. Better for me. So before we go into the questions and I attend to other questions, again, don't forget what I explained last week, Sunday, what Paul says should be the golden rule of Christian conduct. All things are lawful for me, but he says not all things are expedient. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse number 23. All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. That means there are things that, so I told you that the Christian walk goes beyond good or bad, right? I will remember that what is the yardstick for the decisions that we make, what to do and what not to do, goes far beyond either it is good or bad. It has to do with whether it is expedient or not. Is it necessary? So you communicate, we settle that on time. We settle that on time so that okay. So the word experience is something that is necessary, something that is needful. So that means there are things that are lawful, alright, but are not needful. Things that you can decide not to do. It's not because not doing them, it's not because doing them is going to affect your salvation, or because not doing them, or because doing them is wrong. Alright, but because there are other factors that determine right or wrong for us. Paul says that we have to think about, of course, in 1 Corinthians 10 was talking about food offered to idols. I explained all of that, last week. But the application of that text goes far beyond food offered to idols. That at every point in time, as believers, 2 things determine what we do or not do. The first thing that determines whether or not we should do something is if that conduct is of Satan. That means we can see that it's a character trait of those who are in the world. Like Paul says in Ephesians 2 verses 1 through 3, that the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the sons of disobedience, is walking in the world. So that's a factor. So the moment we see that this thing is not proper, it's not biblical, as we say, those are things that you can call outright sins, so to speak. So we say that that is forbidden for the believer. But more than that, Paul also instructs on conscience. He instructs on conscience, the conscience of the weak believer. Sometimes not even our own conscience, but the conscience of those who are around us. Now Paul says that before we do something, we must always consider the conscience, the knowledge level of the people who surround us, round about. That if we embolden people who don't have accurate understanding to do things that they know to be wrong, Paul says that you have sinned against Christ. And the point here is that there are things in life that are more important than the decisions that we want to make. We ought to make, there's this scripture we ought to use popularly, the kingdom of God is not to meat and drink. Praise the Lord, Romans 14:17, the kingdom of God is not to meat and drink, but in righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Ghost. And a lot of people don't even understand what Paul was talking about, because he was talking about food over to idols in context. So Paul says that food and meat and drink and what is offered to idols is, you are saying that when we know that there is no idol in this world, so it's fine. it's okay to eat food offered to idols. But it says that you have a brother who is weak in the faith. That's verse number 1. You have a brother who is weak in the faith. He doesn't have the understanding that you have. He doesn't have the knowledge that you have. So he sees food offered to idols as a sin. And so he says that because of that person, forgo your right to eat and drink. That's the point. Because of that person, even though it is your right to have to eat that meat, it is your right to drink that thing. He says, because of that person, forgo that right. Because the kingdom of God is not in meat and drink. The kingdom of God is not about food. In other words, he's saying that food is not something that should make you violate the conscience of the fellow believer. Of course, you can apply that to things other than food. Praise the name of the Lord Jesus. So the point is so that the kingdom of God is not for righteousness, to do what is right. Peace, the things that make for peace and enjoy in the Holy Ghost. It says in verse 18, he that in these things serveth Christ is acceptable to God and approved of men. So before I do something as a believer, I must ask myself those questions. Is this a character trait of the world? That's the first question. Number 2, what is the conscience level, the knowledge level of the people who are around about me before I decide to go ahead and do that? Because like Paul says, like Jesus says, he who, like Paul rather, the man who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, it is a sin to that person, because he knows the right thing to do, but he decides not to do that. You have this popular text in Titus that people also use to defend nonsense or to be pure things are pure. And so you have people who tell you, well, what matters is whether or not I see it as pure or all manner of nonsense, because they don't even understand what Paul was talking about. That's Titus chapter number 1 and verse 15. Unto the pure things are pure, with them that are defiled, and unbelieving is not impure, but even their mind and conscience is defiled. They profess that they know God, but in works they deny it, being abominable and disobedient, and doing good work hypocrite. So people twist this text to mean that, well, as far as I see it as good, it's fine. But that's neglecting the context of words. He's talking about false doctrine from verse number 9. Alright, that's what he's talking about, false doctrine. Hold fast the faithful word. Verse number 9. There are unruly and vain talkers. Those are the false teachers. Their mouth must be stopped as we preach the gospel. That is the conversation that led to verse 15, not giving heed to Jewish rules and commandments of men that turn from the truth. So when it says, unto the pure all things are pure, it's talking about purity of doctrine. That means the man whose heart is pure receives the purity of Christ's doctrine as pure. Simple. The man whose heart is defiled, and that's why it calls that man unbelieving. That means the man who has an unbelieving heart will not receive the purity of Christ's doctrine. It's not going to receive the truth as the truth. It's a way of saying the truth will sound like falsehood to the person who has not believed. That's what he's saying. The truth is going to sound as like falsehood to those who are upholding Jewish fables. Verse 14. That's what he's talking about, basically. So he's not talking about things relating to conscience or conduct matters. It's doctrine, basically. So don't say that, well, if I see it as pure, then it's pure. If I don't see it as pure, then there's no something like that. The scriptures tell us to put other factors in our consideration in estimating whether or not an activity is right or wrong. So yes, your conscience is a factor. The moment your conscience violates something, they don't do it. Because the moment you are holding your conscience with doing it, your conscience keeps getting emboldened. Do not just that thing, but every other thing as well that is contrary to God's word and spiritual growth and all of that. So that's that. So as we come over to our questions, and these are the things that we are going to look at. It's not basically good or bad, like I said last week Sunday. But we are going to look at more important things: your conscience as a person, the conscience of the other person as a person, and then we will look at how God's word guides us and rules us and leads us to continue with that. And so I'm going to take the questions on time, so that, because I have to wrap up questions on career and business today. Next week is when I'm wrapping up these conversations, and it's for something else entirely. So I have to ensure that I have enough time. So I get 3 people's numbers. So if you have questions apart from those 3, can you raise your hand so that I can give the numbers once and for all before we go on? Questions bothering around workplace and career, business matters. that I've not addressed. I already gave three questions or students and academics. All of that. I already gave 3 questions out, so this is the only question. So I have just 4 questions today. Literally we see 5. Okay, that's good for me. Okay, so let me have your question.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about it's related to tech now. Now there are things that we pay subscriptions for, right? Or that we buy. Now the thing is, when we charge a customer, let me give an example. Let's say it's a website, then we buy plugins and things. So we now say, okay, plugin and thing X amount, then development X amount. But the fact is that if you buy one thing, you have bought it. So if another client wants to do something like that and you already have the thing, you can reuse it. You can always reuse it since you have bought it.
Definitely, yes.
So my question is it now right to charge the next client?
For the same thing.
Yes, since you have it, but you bought it by a definite.
I think I don't know who is doing this soup in this way. The soup is interfering with my and it's Gary Wood.
Yeah.
That one is very Gary. It is soup and trying to figure out. Alright. So I guess I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Is that and then subscriptions to they are like that. You pay for certain software, say beyond every month. Now, if one client uses it, fine. If 2 clients, but it's the same subscription.
Yes. You know, what you are saying is the same thing as a tailor who buys wool for a particular cloth. Buys wool, buys whatever accessories that she needs for the cloth. And then she has left over from that particular dress. Can the person use it for another dress? Absolutely yes. And collect her money. Absolutely yes. So that's not an issue at all. It's very much in order. So the second one. You have from this. You have a different question. Let me finish my 5 questions. Who would I give number 2 to? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so I have 3 questions that are a bit personal, specific. So the first one is this: as a believer in business, will there be anything called excess profits? Now let me explain. For instance, you import something from China and the landing cost is 4,000 naira. And then I go on Facebook. I know that the landing cost, me and you people know this thing, that the landing cost is 4,000 naira. And I go on Facebook and I see that same product being advertised at 30,000 naira. I'm always like, hey. Now, as a rule, I set a rule for myself in business that my profit should not exceed 100%. Now, I know I have taught as a business coach, I have taught my students that market is wide, so you can fix any price. But as a person, I usually feel, I don't know, there's this thing that used to do me that or Dubai. So I want to validate that conscience. I want you to prove me right or wrong so that I know what to start doing from now. So is there anything as excess profit?
Okay, so I think I addressed a similar question last week, that when it comes to pricing or costing, it's usually based on the preference of the person selling the goods, because every product has its market. For instance, the product that you said was advertised for 10,000 naira, someone else can advertise it for 100,000 naira, and people who prefer to pay the 100,000 naira will go and buy that instead and decide to. But yes, when the issue is if your conscience violates it, then don't do it.
Okay, my conscience is not on it. Thank you.
So now she's speedily, my conscience is not on it. I have one thing more to say. So basically that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so the second question is this. Now, when you want to send goods, there's a logistics company will usually ask you for the weight of the goods.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have a weighing scale. So most times I just assume I round up. Although I know that by rounding up at times I try to reduce the weight because the higher the weight, the higher the price. So for instance, I just look at the goods and say, this thing cannot weigh more than 2 kg. So I just write 2 kg. I know that the weight is not exact. Am I wrong in doing that?
Buy a weight scale.
Glory to Jesus. Okay, sir.
Again, that will solve the matter. With the weight scale, you don't have to assume. If you take the exact scale, because the point is without that, without the weight scale, when you are packaging a product and you know it's 3 kg, by the time you look at the money, you'll be convincing yourself, could be 3 kg. And you know it's not how much is weight scale. Just buy a weight scale and let your conscience rest.
Okay, sir. So finally, this one is.
You know why I say God is helping us? Because she uses it to cheat. So I continue.
Okay, sir. So this one is a bit sensitive.
Okay.
So this is it. I sell brief and intimate lingerie, and although this thing are actually meant for married women.
Okay.
But we cannot dispute the fact that young girls, especially Lekki babes, buy this thing, and we know why they are buying it. Now, as a coach, I have taught my students, you can go to, although I have corrected that statement, but I usually tell them that you can go to any length to market it. So this length includes you wearing it and taking pictures of yourself. I don't do it, and I have corrected it. So I once taught them that way. Now, the thing is, I usually post these things. And there was a particular time I posted it on my group, and then someone came to me. She was a Muslim and Elijah. She was like, can she get a better picture for this thing? Maybe just a mannequin or not someone wearing it that is not exposing all of it. So I'm like, this is the only picture we have for market. She's like, she cannot use this one to market, and she was an Elijah. So I was like, you can't use this one to market. So me that I'm a believer, am I supposed to be using it? Now, because of that, I stopped posting it on my status.
Okay.
And also because I know that believers view my status, and then I have to
We all put yourself.
be sensible in the things that I post. So I stopped that. But then on my groups, I cannot get alternatives for these pictures. And me, I know that I am not, the essence of advertising this thing is not for all these 18-year-old girls to come and buy. It's for married women. But they keep buying. And yes, I don't know, there's no other way to market this thing without posting those kind of pictures.
So you are asking if posting to your WhatsApp group is okay. I mean, you want to start posting it on your WhatsApp status. So just so that you are clear.
No, I'm not reposting on my WhatsApp status.
So that is one. Okay. So your WhatsApp group, if it's okay to get a woman to wear the long, what do you call it?
Lingerie.
To wear it and then you post it, it will good for them. What do you think? I want to give people opportunity to answer questions today. I want to give people opportunity to answer questions today. And if you are saying how would have been asking questions, what do you think is that? Don't give all this and
Like
all this
sexy,
all this. Do you like rope like this? Do you like rope like this?
on only things.
You don't say no. You need to do it for you. Some friends will say for people. Okay, so yes, it is. Now, the most important thing is this. As a believer, you cannot contribute to unity. First thing. That's the most important thing. You cannot, and I think that if you are going to do something like that, it's better you take mannequins. Instead of getting a human being with functional chest. So if you put it on a mannequin or find something else to decorate it with, it's better than a human being. It's better. It's better. Now, I was going to talk about your class because now you have to understand your business class, for instance, is not gray areas. How does it do that? It's not a Bible class. So they have, how do you do that? So in the world, they have their marketing tools. Their market, like I once mentioned, I'm a lecturer. There are certain things that I would not advocate as a pastor, that because it's part of the course we do, that is what my students will be tested. I'm not even the one that when they go to write their national exam, they're going to ask them the question, or that they're going to ask them questions boarding around family planning. And I told them, no, there's no family planning. Abstinence, you stop. Don't do nothing. When they now get there, they now ask them the question. They will now be counting the city and faith. So I have to teach them and give them my personal advice. I give them my personal sentiments. This is what our Ops and Gynae course says, but I will advise you as a lecturer to look it. So I do that. In that way, I fulfill what the curriculum says should be taught, while I am affirming what my personal sentiment concerning the matter. So you are teaching marketing, whatever that you are teaching them. You're going to teach them how they market. It is the word is going to tell you that markets, because people in your class are not just only Christian. There are people from all manner of. But you have to let them know where you stand as a Christian now is. In other words, personally, because I'm a Christian, I don't do that. I do that. But this is the general marketing issue. Check it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
Sir, in this case.
You pastor, please.
Thank you, Pastor.
Yes, sir.
In this case now, let's assume she has the mannequin she has. Can she post it on our WhatsApp status?
And mannequins are good. Mannequins are good, man. I still wouldn't say put it on your WhatsApp. Anyways. But then the question will now arise, what of our shop? Do you understand? What of our shop? She has to display some of this, if she wants to display some of these products in her store, she has to use a mannequin to display them. And so yes, it's not wrong, it's just that I may not do it. Eh? Angels are the ones doing the business better. No, I get the point. I just said that as a joke, by the way. But I don't think a mannequin stuff is that bad. Anyway, I don't think it's much of an issue, especially because I know that people when in a physical store, I would not say the person should move the mannequin. They are not Easter in Kano. Because it's Easter, the Easter people in Kano are the ones removing mannequins from shop. And I get why they are trying to do it, but then I don't think a girl, if you are a man and a girl going to our house, you have a problem. And that's no longer normal. It's phenomenal. I'm not bothering you. God. That's not. What is number 3?
Thank you, Pastor Sam.
Yep.
My first question, I want to ask about projects in school.
Okay.
Okay, so let's imagine I have a supervisor and he gives me a very serious project, like I'm a BSc student and he gives me a master's project that he knows that is, and I know that the reason he's giving me that project is because he wants to use it for project, and I can't really do it. And then I get help from outside to do it. Is it wrong?
Help from outside, you find help from outside.
Okay. I get someone to help me. For example, you tell me to use a particular software that is going to take me the whole month to learn, and then there's a deadline to meet. So in that kind of case, if I get someone to do it while the person puts me through after he's done, is this wrong?
The person can help you source for materials that you are going to use to do it, but you should do it yourself.
Okay.
That's what I said, yes. I said the person can help you source materials that you are going to use. Since it's not at your level, if there is someone who can help you, the person cannot be. Now the issue with project issue, that's just saying a lot in Ekpeda, is the fact that if as a student you stand before your slates to defend your project, and they ask you, did you do this project yourself or they did it for you? Will you tell them they did it for you? That's the first thing. You cannot say it. If you cannot say it, it is because that it is wrong. Since it is wrong, then nobody can be your project for you. So you can source for materials because it's just like when you went to Google and get materials, but this is not Google. When someone who has access to some of these materials, you even pay the person to get the materials. Put the materials together yourself and do your projects. That's what your school says you should do.
Okay, sir. So still on that, let's imagine, because I had a friend where the person they told us to take samples, and one sample cost like 40K.
Okay.
So they told us to do like 20 samples of that thing as an undergraduate student. So what she did was that she did one sample and then she found a way to manipulate the rest because she could not afford the remaining. So in that case, I'm not saying that what she did was wrong or right, but in that case, if I'm a student in that case, what should I do?
The first thing I will tell you is to talk to the dean or the people who are in charge of your school and make them understand what is going on. They said I should do these things. It's going to cost me 800,000 naira. There's no way I can get the money from. If they do that, they can change. I have students that my faculty approves project topics for. When they come to me and I look at what it will take them, I tell them, go back, tell them I said they should change their topic for you. And they go there, talk to them, and they change the topics for them. So it's the best for manipulating now.
Okay, so still on that student line. Now, when we were in school, we had a lot of things in our labs that were not working.
Okay.
So they were always giving wrong results, and they can frustrate you, like serious frustration. So in that kind of case, what we did, let me say, is that you just manipulate the results. You just because there's no how you want to do it that the whole thing will balance. And if it doesn't balance, the lab guys know that the thing is not working and they will still give it to you. You tell them it's not working, they will still say use it like that, and they are still expecting a particular kind of result. So in that kind of case, as a believer, what should I do?
There's a Nigerian problem. Yeah. That's not this. Okay, so he asked that, the opponent was he asked that, was it better you have a question? Okay, it was my one who asked him because he said in Unilag that Unilag they have exact same issue where they give them lab work to do, the instruments are not working, but because they already know what the answer will be. So they just enter the lab as though they are doing something, but they are not doing anything. And they just write the answer there and then they get out. So I told him that, and this I'm going to repeat, that when you have things like that, if things are how they should be, the people who are in charge should be well informed. This is what is going on. The apparatus in our laboratories are not working, and then they said we are supposed to get results from it. The point, as long as you are there and you are going to work there, if you don't have the apparatus, there's nothing that you can do. The only alternative will be go to another school to use their, and I don't know any school that will allow you to enter their own laboratories without paying their students. So in that particular case is peculiar because there is no other way out than to get the result that you are looking for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, so as a lesson teacher now, if I get to see that a lot of my students fail the course and I decide to give all of them 20 marks, and it's uniform, is it appropriate?
The first question is why is there mass failure if it does well? That's the first question. If there is mass failure in every educational system, it is always the lecturer's fault anywhere. So let them fail, let the school query you. Yes, the school will query you for their failure, and whatever the cost is, whatever the penalty is, as the lecturer, pay it.
Okay, sir. So talking about some schools now, that because it's happening in a lot of international schools and secondary schools now, especially where rich people are playing, so they will tell you that you should increase that, like as a school administrator, if you don't increase, they will withdraw their students. So in that kind of case, how do we manage?
If you are the one that asks the school has to be, your client, your parents have to be aware that you don't swell marks in your school. Whatever you have, is what you get. You want to follow your student, get out. Is that simple? It's again, some of these things are a matter of fundamental principles. I think I started there, I don't know who was last week, where I work. When I first started, they tried to do that thing with me. They didn't know me here. So the administrator looked at my script, saw some student that she liked, who had carried over in my course. And she was I don't pull up. I said, no, she failed. She failed. How come 3 or 4 of them, they didn't? This is their exam script. Look at it. And there's nothing that we can do about it. They failed. They have to do carryover. And the moment they saw that stand was found, they didn't, everybody let it go. So it's that very, very simple. It's not that complicated.
Yes, sir. Sister, if you are in a workplace and let's imagine you've done your job correctly, and there's somebody in that workplace, because with the authority of your boss, tampers with what you are doing. For example, now let me take the teacher for example. Now there's a teacher, there is probably a form teacher, and then before you now have the principal. So I, as a teacher, have documented everything that I'm supposed to document. Then the form teacher, with the compliance with the principal, increases the mark without my knowledge. In that kind of case, what should I do?
You have done your work. You have submitted your work. Whatever iniquity that wants to happen, it does not involve you any longer.
Alright, okay, sir. Alright, so I want to ask about cracked software.
Oh, we talked about that. We talked about that in the program this morning. Cracked, pirated software.
Yes.
Pirated software.
Okay, because a lot of the antiviruses we use are pirated and all those kind of. So that kind of case, even movies, a lot of movies that we buy are pirated.
Yep.
So in that kind of case, as a believer, what should I do?
Okay, so this is what I told them, which is not a very easy answer, but the answer is what it is. Piracy is wrong. It's wrong because for every pirated software that you buy or pirated movie that you watch, the original owner of that content is losing money. That's where the challenge is. If you are the one who creates a movie and they pirate it, you are going to sue for pirates. Like when you see what you are losing because of the pirates, you are going to get it. So the believer should know. That is why you have Netflix. If you have to watch movie, subscribe on Netflix per month and watch movie that you want. If you cannot afford, it means you cannot afford to watch a movie.
It's all of the antivirus.
The antivirus thing, the ideal thing is for proper softwares to be bought. But I told them there that at this particular point, because a lot of people are saying that as well, so they have a lot. I said, well, you can't possibly go back home and break all your pirated softwares and throw it away. So for going forward, you can properly plan towards it. Like I'm going to get another software, let me save enough money to get it. And then she even shared something the other time that there are sites where they subscribe and pay those people. And that site now has gained license from all those companies to sell out their products at subsidized rates. So if there's that option, then why go and buy 150 in another?
It's our final question. So, this question has always been on my mind before career. That is it okay for a fashion designer who is a believer to sew revealing clothing? Revealing clothing. Revealing is revealing.
Well, it's tough. It's dicey, and there are reasons why that is. Because revealing clothes. Is it alright for a Christian fashion designer to sew it? How many are fashion designers here? That's how it is. No, they are fashion designers. Do you think it's okay? Now, the reason that is a bit tough is because clients always have preferences, and because there are certain circles, for instance, that certain people go to, that what we call in our own social circle. They don't sit like that there. And so because there's that difference in social structure in different places, it becomes very, very dicey. So what, for instance, someone could decide, okay, I'm not going to move to this part of Lagos. There are certain social gatherings that you go to that nobody is going to be looking at you twice if you make that kind of growth. Nobody has your time to be looking at you like that, because it's to them, it's you are putting on a dress. It's that very simple and that not complicated. So that's why I say it is quite very, very dicey. So it's not it's something that I leave to conscience. Something that I just leave to conscience. Right. Is it an offshoot of this person? This passion thing? Okay. It's good and allowed. Is anybody? I take good at first and come.
First listener.
Yeah.
As regards what you said, I think at Ebeda, no, during Fotizo, that if it is actually going to enhance the devil's, how do I put it down? If it's going to enhance the kingdom of darkness, like whatever it is, then we should not do it. So, based on what you said as regards the revealing dress, I feel like normal human being would actually say that this is actually of the devil, in the sense that you're actually trying to seduce, even when it's not like that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. There is a cloth that now there is something that someone can wear here that we are going to say she's trying to seduce us. And that she can wear the same thing to another place. Nobody has that kind of thought in their head concerning what she puts on. That nobody is looking at that. So it's different from you as a believer putting it on. That was the emphasis that I was looking there. That, for instance, when it comes to nudity, the emphasis is on what you wear. What you wear. Now, if you were to sew, what example did I give now? If you are a fashion designer and then say maybe you sewed a skirt that was touching, let's say it's just a little above your client's knee, and then the client grew up, added some pages, and so the skirt is up. Are they going to hold you responsible for the shortness of the skirt? The answer is no. Because in that context, for instance, now, it is the client that has added a little pages to the person side. So when it comes to making dresses, there are specific contexts. The environment, the culture, the society has a lot of role to play concerning that.
Yeah. I have questions based on what Mr. asked.
Okay.
The first one is on lecturers and the students' course.
Okay.
While I was lecturing, they made sure that we added, it was a standard, if your students are, if you're falling between 67, 69, round them up to 70,
Yes.
give them an A.
Yes.
It's still the same thing as adding.
That's different. I think I mentioned it here in church also. Was it last week? Was it at the weather? That if I have students who have between 47 and 49 in my courses, I add them up to 50 because that is the cut-off mark. And I do that because their assignments and their attendance are at my discretion. Meaning that I'm the one who judges, I'm the one who gets to judge. It's not like the examination where there is a standard mark, this is 10 marks, 5 marks. The test, for instance, I look at what you write and then if I'm having a bad day, I can give you 5. Or I'm feeling quite good already. I like your answer in number 1. I look at number 2. Number 1 is very, very sweet. This one. So there are things like that I do at my discretion that I could revisit your test script and then decide that is it just for me to deny you 2 marks or deny you 1 mark because I didn't like how you just structured this particular sentence, or because you gave me 4 points instead of 5 points. Things like that, that if I remark and anybody looks at the script again, they're going to say that, oh well, this course has been ordered. In the other case, she was talking about adding 20 marks uniformly to every student because many of them had mass failure. That's totally different. It's totally different because number 1, if you have a mass failure, there's already a problem somewhere. That's why I address it from the roots. there's already a problem somewhere. It's either you did not do your work well or all your students are dollars, which is almost impossible. So there has to have been a root problem, and adding extra marks will not solve it.
So it's not wrong if we have mass failure and they all fall between 46 to 50 and I decide to add 5 marks for everybody.
How can everybody have 46 to 50 in your class?
I mean, and a lot of everybody, a lot of them have between 46 to
And
49.
she's talking about she's talking about everybody having between 46 to 50 all the class. So you're adding 5 marks. That's an hypothetical impossible situation.
No, in a course.
I'm talking about the course.
Not everybody, I'm saying majority. So I decide to dash everybody, as in all of them.
I didn't say dash. In my case, I said I remarked.
So I'm giving them 5 marks, and I call it maybe attendance, or I call it.
The person, the mark you are giving,
Yes.
is it actually attendance mark? That's the question. In my case, I'm telling you what I do. I remark the test scripts.
So we have to remark.
That's what I do. Because my conscience, and so I have to go back and mark the test script, see if the person actually can have 2-3 extra marks to get the cutoff mark.
Okay, sorry, one more question on this. If I'm remarking that person's script, and I'm giving the person an extra 3 marks on a particular statement the person has made, for example, it means I have to remark the 700 other students' script and give them extra 3 marks on that
It's
exact
not
statement.
necessary because not all of them are not writing the same sentence.
But it's similar. So, for example, they say list this, and one of the things you're listing is not among the things I actually taught in class, but it could also pass. And a lot of them listed it. So I'm giving one person extra 3 marks for it because I want the person to scale through. Others are scaled through 50, right? Does that mean I have to remark everybody's script?
That's exactly what I'm saying. If you are going to, because you are a lecturer, if you are going to remark scripts, you know where to read to remark. It can't exactly be if you ask them to itemize. For instance, in my case, let me use my case. The kind of test questions I give my students are critical thinking tests. It's not itemized. You have to think, they produce the thoughts well. So it's how much I like how you thought it through and wrote it down that determines what you get. So that's my discussion to remark at any time. That's what I do. I'm setting my own personal case in this context.
So one last question on piracy. Because I taught computer engineering, and yes, the first thing I teach my students is not to pirate or not to, So what I do most times is I take a software that has 30, for example, AutoCAD, Ubuntu, they have 30 days trial. We use them for 30 days. On the 30th day, I install all the computers and I reinstall it again for 30 days. And we keep doing that every time. Is that wrong?
I don't understand. Try for 30 days. So you install from that computer. You install on another computer.
So I call here to that. We install. What we do is we install on that computer for 30 days. Once it's expired, we install on the software. So for example, an OS, we format the
Like you format the OS, put the software back on for another 30 days because you don't want to pay.
So that's how I run
The
my
one for the
software.
subscription.
Because the school refused to pay. You know me.
And you cannot pay.
Do you know what?
How much is it?
Let's not tell. That's all I can know.
Okay, so that the point is, I know that the easy answer is a why not. Just because you install and you install, it's not a big problem. The third point is students to contribute. Let them buy the permanent license for the AutoCAD. Then use it for your class. So if you don't do it, there is no the school is not giving us. I'm not going to use my money to do it. The only way for us to have AutoCAD software to use for this course is if we buy it. If they don't do it, just here, it's as simple as that. Thank you. On this same matter. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
So, my company, or say, an environment where they have to bid for projects and all of that, and part of the requirement is that there should be, like, probably your members of staff, they should have a number of years they are spent with you. And probably myself, I spent 3 years. I did not know when they listed up this people that spent 5 years experience. I said I have 5 years experience, 6 years experience, and I finished school yesterday. And they listed the city. I didn't know about it until maybe they submitted the bid.
Okay.
And I thought, that's what city is going, wow. What do I need to have, please?
Okay, so they lied on your behalf. They lied on your behalf without your permission. And they submitted a bid for their company with your name on it. Are you the one who wants to defend the bid?
No. I just saw it. I just saw, oh, serious, selling this thing.
Then you talk to your boss. Now, it's not the biggest company you have issues with. It's with your own local overseers. Now, I've only been experienced is 2 years. So I can put 4 5 years experience on it. So I'm not the one I'm committed for. That's not. You're not the one that like. There are companies like that who do things like that without the consent of their employees. Just to look there, and there is almost nothing you can do about it. Because you are not the owner of the company, you are not the one presenting the bid, you are not the one they are going to give the award of the bid to. You are just an ordinary employee in the company. So there are decisions that are going to make that you are not, that you don't approve, that you may not have power to change. Because you don't have influence over that decision.
I notice probably they now win the thing. They now win. And then they now say, okay, we want to compensate. Probably after everything, down to
Give the staff money. They want for
probably
obviously what they did for what?
okay, probably a government project.
That means what they are going to do is to do it. That's what they are paying for is the work that they are not paying for 3 years experience.
Okay, what I'm saying is that in another sense of it, probably you are an accountant, and they say, okay, this person is also a builder. Wow.
So they wrote it in it and I do that.
Yeah, they make you go. You just go there and just.
You go there. No. That is where you come in. That is where you come in as a believer. I'm an accountant. So that's where you come in. So whenever they want to implicate you as a person, then your Christian values have to come out. And I may not own the company and what the decision that you make, but yet you're asking me to go and stand and lie that I'm who I am not. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. It's as simple as that. And when they know what you cannot or what you will not do, they will ask another accountant to go and present himself as a leader and give you a credit. Last, they will not give you any compensation at this time. Yeah, follow up, yes.
Okay. So my question is slightly different, right? It's not a thing of like his own case where they tell you to do a job that you don't do.
Okay.
This one is you're presenting a pitch. You are an expert in this thing, expert in capital markets, mergers and acquisition. You are good at what you do, but you've not spent 3 years. Let's say you spend 1.5 years, 2, and then they say you spent 3 years or 4 years because in the RFP they say that your employee must have spent at least 3 years with you. Now they put it in the pitch, you don't see it because it's the seniors that present it. But by the time they give you that contract, you are the one doing the deal, not your seniors. Your seniors just tell you, oh, they've awarded us this thing, congrats everybody, let's start the work. You are the one doing the work. You don't have 3 years experience, you don't have 5 years experience, but you can do the work from start to finish and they will never know. Now in that case, should you meet your boss and tell him, I can't work on this deal because you guys lied on the pitch? Or should you tell your clients that actually I'm good, but
I mean, you can't tell your clients. That's the first thing. The client is even totally out of it because your client has business with your company.
okay.
You are working for the company.
Okay.
So if there's any interaction at all, it has to be between you and the boss. And I know that if your boss is ending up saying, okay, yeah, sorry, we'll not need to do next time. Try to work on it. He said that next time you tell you, forget that, next time we're not going to tell you, say you do 4 or 5 years. Try go and effort and work on the matter. And at that point, you will see that.
Actually, I asked one day and my boss was like, okay, and moved on. Like, I saw the picture, I was like, I don't have 5 years. I've not spent 5 years. And I was like, I'm not done.
You want to more?
I'm very good to achieve.
I told you that. Now, you cannot say that you are not going to work on it. You cannot say that because again, your boss now. The issue here is that the skill set to get the job done is something that you have. The issue is that in the pitch that they submitted, they said you have. The best thing you can do as to raise an objection concerning it. As an objection concerning the fact that an organ, and if it's someone that you have rapport with, my counsel would be that in whatever way or method you are going to make him know that organ, next time when you want to do something like this, you should not be. I don't know the kind of relationship you have with your boss, but it's best for them to know exactly what you appreciate and don't appreciate before they start lying on your behalf. So that next tomorrow, they will not take it to the next level, to the point where now you implicate you, and then there is nothing else that you can do about it.
Okay, understood. I have another question in that regard. Another thing that people do on pitches when you're presenting is that after they put your CV, they put the logos of companies you've worked on in this kind of business. So maybe you've worked with GT, this one. And the companies actually worked with, say, the whole 30 companies, but they now give you've actually only worked on 7 out of the 30 that you were the person on the team.
Yes.
But they now add other logos under your name. You didn't work on it. You were in the company, you knew about it, but you didn't work on it. Should you push back on that?
Push back on to the client or to the company.
To the company. Because they put it under your CV.
Yeah, I think that you should. I think that they should know that since that there is no way you are going to defend, you can take it from that angle. You are going to defend projects that you never worked on before your clients, and it's going to be an issue. You don't want to embarrass yourself. You pretend that it is the client that you have worked with that they should put there, so that whenever you start to defend it before your clients and questions related to that arises, you are coherent and you know what to say. I would suggest it. But because again, the issue with all these companies is that they are going to use it to lie a lot because they are trying to make money. And the moment you don't take a stand on time, it will only get worse. It will only get worse. Then they are going to start actively continuing to be now. People at the beginning they will do it passively without your participation. Then it will come to a point where they want you to be actively involved in it because you have been quiet, she's one of us. So the time that maybe your boss or your immediate boss want to work on the deal and just order some things. You come here, let's do this thing. I beg forget that thing, what are you talking about? Work on this thing for me, you are not an employee in this business. Now they box you into a corner where it's not difficult to come out from. But if from the beginning they know that this kind of thing, I am bounce back out, she will tell you that no, put only companies that work for my CV and all that. The next time like that, if they want to lie, they will take another page.
Okay. Sorry, one last question, somewhat related. So there is a transaction, different processes on the transaction, and let me just be very specific. Let's say it's a merger and acquisition transaction, and one of the things you have to do in a merger and acquisition is that you have to build financial models for that company. Now, the company will charge you for the transaction, for overseeing the transaction. But when you start telling them things like, oh, I want to build a separate model for maybe for a subsidiary that would that you first awarded to us, the company pushes back and says, okay, you have to pay an additional 50 million or you have to pay an additional 25 million. And you know that this thing is something that if they give you one day, you will do it. And maybe your own charge cannot pass. You don't, if the person is a church member, maybe you won't charge, but because you have to be a professional, the max you charge, well, you shall charge, so to speak. But never be up to what they are going to charge. And the company sort of knows that you can do it. So they come to meet you outside and they say, can you do this for us? We'll pay you what to pay. Right?
The client.
Yes.
Okay, the client corners you and says,
and says,
because it doesn't matter who does it. The point is done. And the opinion. It's not any regulatory, it's not that SEC or anybody will come and arrest you. They just want something done. But they are saying, instead of paying the company, you do it for us. We're not going to tell the company to know, just do it for us.
Okay, so let me get this thing. So the client comes to your company. Now, the initial thing that the client wants, does it involve or include this other grammar that you are uploading?
So the initial thing that the company said to my company is that we want you to value this company.
Okay.
But they now thought about it. Let's kill two birds with a stone.
Okay.
Can you also value the sister company?
Okay.
And then the company says, you will have to pay
Extra.
additional.
Okay.
Now the charge doesn't make sense.
Okay. Okay. So I get the point. So the client now says, this sister company, why don't you just do it for us? We give you.
We're not using the result for anything. We just want to know what the company is worth, and we'll pay you lower down in the company.
Okay, so let's take it into you from accounting to another thing, because that's how it is. So let's imagine that someone is where is finishing. Okay, so let's say that he works as a web developer for a particular company. And then so a client comes and says, well, this company, we want your company to develop this web for us. And they pay, and then they now come to you and say, can you help us develop this app? We are not giving your company, we are giving it to you. Is that something like that? We are giving it to you to do. Just help us do this app, we are going to give you this money. Is it right or wrong? Because we have to look at it like that from different perspectives.
So, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The way it works there, if they give me the project in the name of my company, I can't do it without my.
Yes, but that's not the name of your company.
If it is not the name of my company, I work as
So that's exactly what I'm coming for. Because the point is that even while you are working for a firm, you can have freelance roles that you pay, where you take individual jobs and you execute. That's just that you are not cornering from your company, like they gave it to your company. You see that? What did you say? Is it cornering?
So I didn't go to meet them.
No, understand the concept, understand my meaning cornering. Cornering means that they gave it to my company. I stole the work and decided to do it. That's cornering. It's different from the client comes and says that we are not giving this particular sister work to your company. We are giving it to you as a person to do. So the agreement is between us.
Sir, one other thing, sorry.
Yeah.
One other thing that matters in the industry is if, and this is a very, very major, if the client is a client that my company works with,
Yeah.
I cannot work for the person.
Okay. It's wrong because I don't know how it works in your distance. That's why I'm asking this question.
So, one of the things I consider before taking a job is if the person has no relationship with your boss at all, or my boss. So, if that kind of relationship does not exist, I can take the job.
Okay.
Or if it does, it's betrayal.
Okay. So let other accountants do. Let me know what you give almost every person. Come. Okay.
So when you're working for a company, your intellectual property, what they call that, belongs to the company, which means that whatever you're doing that relates to that work belongs to the company.
That relates to that work.
Yes, that you do in that company belongs to the company. It's part of the contract.
Okay, so
It's different.
So, wait.
Okay.
So think of the fact that okay, you are a fashion designer.
Yeah.
So let's look at it in this context. CEO of your company. You work as a tailor in your company. So your skill as a fashion designer belongs to your company.
Yes. So
Okay.
you need, okay.
So can someone else contract you to sew clothes for them outside of the company?
I cannot do it, especially if it is something I've learned in that particular office. It is not allowed. Yes. Now it's different. Yes, it's different. No, when you're hiring someone, sorry, excuse me.
Because I need to get out your system. But
No,
it doesn't
yes.
work like that in my
When you're hiring someone, there are people that they hire and they tell you that you can do your thing outside, and they let you know the terms and conditions when you're working, especially when it comes to skills, handwork. They'll tell you that if you're working with me, For example, I can create a design. You cannot make that design outside.
It's not about creating
No,
a
I'm giving
particular
an example,
design.
yes.
No, okay, look at design for instance. Let's say I work as a graphic designer for a company.
Yes.
Can I do graphic design for somebody else outside the company?
There are companies that will tell you that you cannot. And there are companies that will tell you that you can only do your design outside working hours for other things.
What if you do it outside the working hours?
That's according to your terms and conditions. When a proper organization like a financial firm
Yeah.
or a proper company, your intellectual property, they can actually sue you for it. Yes, it belongs to that company. Only your terms at the point of employment states that you can work outside working hours with your hands.
Okay, so you know your terms and conditions.
No, sir. So let me give a context to it. If it was a random company that, the only reason why I'm asking this question is because my company first had conversation and the company asked for it and my company kicked back and said, until you pay me this amount, I can't do it.
Okay.
So if another company comes to me normally outside work hours, build me a hotel, I can build it and I'll collect money.
No, that context put everything that you should not do. Should not do it because in that case now, it was your company they brought to. It is because the client doesn't want to pay your company. That is why they are trying to give you the work to do. In that context also, you cannot go to your boss. If something can get fired, if your boss should. It's good money, but I can get you fired. so when they now fire, or maybe it's conversation between the client and your company, say, how did you eventually out? It was one of your staff you eventually contracted to do, which of them? So since all of that is established, then in fact back to your company. Okay. Let's follow the department, but it's fine.
Yes, I want to demonstrate that decision.
Okay.
Essentially, with the working hour issue, I know you have subject sister else matter because, like you told us, our conscience matters and what happens to one happens to all when it comes to scriptures.
Yes.
So if you are working for Monday to Friday, okay, and I have Saturday and Sunday to myself,
Yes.
I cannot do another job for another person that my boss doesn't know Saturday and Sunday.
No, that's what I'm saying. You can.
No, you see, I'm trying to tell you, no, sister Precious. But that was the issue that was raised. It's the one B that was raised, I don't know with 1A. The 1B of the question is that your intellect.
And that is exactly where I no, see. Wait. You push me again. For instance, listen, it's not hard. Now, you said contract. Is that in your contract? But you just said now that if a company who doesn't have a relationship with your company comes and says, do this thing for me, you are going to do it.
But if my dad tells me, if my dad tells me to do my business for me, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
But if it's a multinational, a corporate that I know that potentially want to work with my firm,
Okay.
then I shouldn't collect it.
Okay. Okay, so the reason I'm having to ask you guys this question because it's not my field, alright? But from the little I know about tech-related matters, I know that the company employs maybe a web developer or an app. They are not going to say that outside work hours, you cannot design flyer for anybody in your life. You cannot develop website for anybody in your life. As long as you are here, that's going to be a fundamental issue. So I don't think so let's stay up with the fact that look at the terms of employment. I think that's the most important thing. Yes? Okay. So the terms of employment, if you know the terms of employment says you cannot do any other thing, they don't take the job. But that's true. I don't think that makes sense anywhere in the world.
So I want to ask a question because I want to know if what I did was right.
Okay.
Because it's done. Now, someone contacted me to do a website for the person, and I said from who? And the person said XYZ. Now, I already finished talking to the person. When I now found out that the person that referred the person was someone my company had worked with.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I did, I spoke to the person to say that okay fine. The amount this person is considering is little. The company will not collect it. But it's something I can do. So I told the person who referred that person, and then I spoke to the person who they referred to say that how I know this person that referred you is through my company, but it is something that I can do at this amount. So we are clearing it up. You are not working with my company, you are working with me.
Okay.
And the reason why I took the thing in the first place was because I did not know who
Who it was, and you did not know that the person, it's not the person that is relationship with your company.
was
It is the person who referred the person,
I thought it was somebody else that I met on the
and
travel.
you already gave the person your word that you're going to do the job.
Yes. And I know, like, how it works is that you know the amount that the company can charge. For instance, let's say the company will charge like 500,000 naira for that kind of job, and then you can charge maybe 200,000 naira for that same job. So you explain to say, okay, this is how it is. Do you still want to move on?
Okay, now where that is technical is, imagine that you are the CEO of the company, and then you are your own employee. Where as a company we charge 500K for this work, but I have a staff member collecting 200K to do it personally without us.
So it's a bit dicey.
Exactly.
You know why? Because I'm like part of the owners of the company.
And the reason I moved it away from your company is because I know that you are a co-founder of your own company. That is, which is making it a bit confusing.
Okay,
How
so
will you co-found the company and then your company that you co-founded charges this amount and you are charging the same thing?
okay, so let me explain how it works. Now, in my company, you can collect jobs. You can do. There's no. If you're working with us, you can't work with no.
Okay.
You can do. As far as you're not taking our clients.
Okay.
That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, we don't go below a certain amount for certain
For your company
kind of
standard,
yes,
for certain kinds of jobs.
because of the standard and what you are trying to set.
Okay.
So we don't go below certain amount as a company.
Okay.
I think it's about maybe 40%, something like that. My CFO knows all of those stuff. So for that kind of thing, if the person had come to us as a company, we would not have collected it.
Okay. And is that not similar to the what is? So the only difference here is that maybe because your own company allows individual staff members to take jobs themselves. That is the only difference in both. In which case they will not be, it might not be wrong, I think, to say that, especially because you know that the price that the person is offering, your company will not take it. So rather than go somewhere else, I can do it for you at this particular rate. That's what you are telling me now. I can do it for you at this particular rate so that the money will not be lost. So yes, maybe.
And I told both parties.
Fine. So I think the conscious matter is settled. If you did it secretly, it will be an issue. Because then if it blows out and people know that, it will now become a problem of how did it happen, that's why did she take and how did that so
So I'm just thinking that sometimes these things cost.
Thank you, sir. I'm just thinking sometimes these things, for example, now if she does it at a lower price, they will keep coming back to her instead of coming back to the company. So I know that as much as we want to do something else, I also feel like we should have a little loyalty to who we are working with. So I feel like, okay, that most times if we know that the company charges this amount, we can also hold that price so that the company we are working for can also, be able to move on. Because these things actually causes companies to also not move as much as they should. That's what I feel anyway.
okay, so I get your point, but there is again where the challenge is. The fact that, like he said, there are certain companies who are trying to set a certain industry standard. And even though they can do certain things for certain reduced costs, they decide to keep it on the high side because of the kind of clients that they want to attract. So you are going to ask people that because of what that company charges, they would never take their business to them. Because we are not the kind of, you don't have the kind of money that your company for this kind of offer, they would rather go elsewhere. And in her own case, for instance, she's representing and she's a company. So it's mostly it's like she's bidding for the job, knowing that there is no way a company is going to ever take that kind of job at that particular price. So I think that's where the little bit of difference is. Yeah.
In my case,
Yeah.
if I refer that client to an individual that will collect what I would have charged, and that person gives me the 10% because I referred you to that person, it's not me now.
Yes, I get the point.
It's someone.
So what you are doing is to refer the person to another company. I mean, an individual outside the company.
Outside me, outside the company, but can do the work, will do the work, but will give me 10%. 20-25.
No, the reason is not the same, is that she's not violating the terms of her contract. That's why you cannot say. Now, these things like this, you have to really think from head to toe and consider every angle, because it's not as straightforward as it appears.